And thank you for joining us here for the finals of the Louisville Open here on the SCG Tour. Late in Season 1, players trying to get those positions for the Players' Championship. For Kent Ketter and Team Lotus, this will be back-to-back wins for his team if he takes it down. It will be his first personal win ever. He's his third finals appearance. He has one more. His deck has been the talk of the weekend. Blue-White Eldrazi posting numbers just up and down the board. It has been the best deck of the tournament by far. He has one more challenge, though, and that's a player who knew what the best deck would be and tried to beat it. It's Austin Holcomb's Affinity deck with a definite anti-Eldrazi flavor.
Absolutely. Game 1, the plan is to be as fast as possible, try to race the Eldrazi deck with just standard Affinity things. Game 2, lock him out with the Snaring Bridge.
Ketter will be on the play as he's the number 4 seed. He's mulliganed, but will be keeping and scryed to the bottom. Holcomb, Pierce has kept to 7. And for Kent, if you ever want to know how he's doing in a match, you always can see it on his face. He plays with his heart. You see here, it's not perfect. You know that much.
Yeah, it looks like he mulliganed, scryed to the bottom. There's something specific that he's missing, and now he's trying to figure out what to do without it.
It's going to be Hallowed Fountain, turn 1. No Eldrazi Mimic, no double land. And for Holcomb, it'll be a turn 1 Vault Scourge. And not just a Vault Scourge, we'll add 2 Memnites to the mix as well.
Yeah, you thought he was done. No way. That's not what Affinity does.
Urborg for Kent. It's one of these dangerous hands with no accelerant. We've seen these from Eldrazi all weekend. When they lack the accelerant, I don't know if we've seen Eldrazi win any of them.
It's definitely a struggle from this point.
He's going to take 3 and actually 4. Kent Ketter going to pay 2 life to dismember away the Vault Scourge, and now it's Steel Overseer.
That does not feel good to see that immediately following.
When you're dismember?
Right.
Yeah, nothing we can do but play Eldrazi Displacer, and behind the 8 ball indeed. Here's Cranial Plating. It'll equip to Memnite.
Things have gone from bad to worse.
And it will swing. Looks like Eldrazi Displacer will trade with the Memnite. In all the talk about how good Eldrazi has been this weekend, we have to remind ourselves that there's another deck that back in its day had to get banned. It was really good. It's still here in Modern, and it's called Affinity.
Yeah, Affinity, to my knowledge, has never been the dominant deck in Modern, but it's always been around, and it's never been horrible.
It's always been tier 1 even.
No one's ever told me they were playing Affinity, and I've been like, why aren't you playing a different deck?
Second Cranial Plating for Holcomb. He's going to equip the plating to Memnite, and now the hits will be real. Memnite going to swing in. See if he uses the Overseer before damage. It's 7 damage as stands. He'll make it 8. And when he tries to, another Dismember from Ketter.
Dismember will make it 0. The Urborg will make that one cost no life.
And Thought-Knot Seer from Kent. Maybe he can recover here. Etched Champion and Galvanic Blast are the 2 cards left in Holcomb's hand.
Notably, Etched Champion, a card people have been shying away from against Eldrazi.
Yeah, I mean, protection from all colors.
Would be amazed if we weren't stripping the Galvanic Blast here.
Galvanic Blast, a card that Austin can... Well, Austin actually doesn't have red mana yet. If Kent really wants to live on the dangerous side of things, he can take the Etched Champion.
It's a consideration.
I mean, the worry right now is that Austin, using those Cranial Platings, can force Kent to trade away to creatures. And I think Kent just doesn't want to risk... He can't risk it. He goes and takes the Galvanic Blast anyway.
Over time, the Steel Overseer will make something meaningful out of that Etched Champion.
Yeah, and this is a great play. Austin's draw was Springleaf Drum. If he had the Galvanic Blast in play, he would immediately be blasting the Thought-Knot Seer and swinging.
Absolutely.
Here is Blinkmoth Nexus. Here's 1 plating onto Blinkmoth Nexus. Not 2 platings, just 1.
Yeah, a little bit choked on mana. Would much rather see a Mox Opal than that Springleaf Drum.
He will put a 1/1 counter on it, though, so that's a 2/2 Nexus, getting pumped 1, 2, 3 for 5 artifacts, so it will be 7 damage. Would put Kent to 9. Kent, no real plays here.
The one saving grace for Kent is it does take quite a bit of a mana investment to even attach just the 1 Cranial Plating again the next turn, though another mana source will make that lethal, assuming Kent doesn't have anything.
Yeah, another mana source, another artifact. Here's another Thought Knot Seer from Kent. He knocks Austin down to 14. He gets to strip another card out of his hand. He has to be sure he knows what he wants to take here. He'll take the Etched Champion.
It seems unlikely that either of those cards will matter in this game.
Yeah, either can Kent survive another turn. Here's Mox Opal. That should do it.
Kent is tapped out.
Yep.
That's the extra mana source for this double equip.
2 platings, that's more than enough damage. Inkmoth Nexus will grab them both and swing in, and game 1 goes to Austin, Holcomb, and Affinity. Winning game 1, so valuable here, especially when you start to look at what Austin has in store for the sideboarded games.
Things are about to get spicy. There's not going to be any peeling of Etched Champion in the sideboarding games.
So for those of you who were not joining us for the semifinals, I'm going to let you run down just what Austin has in store.
So what Austin actually has is a package typically featured in the Lantern of Insight Control deck. He has 2 copies of Ensnaring Bridge and 2 copies of Girapur Aether Grid. Interesting fact about Ensnaring Bridge and Affinity, normally it's just in play and no creatures attack. Not only can Austin cast it and lock Kent off of attacking with large Eldrazi's, but Austin can draw 1 card that turns on attacking with Vault Surge, turns on attacking with Blink Moth Nexuses, Ink Moth Nexuses, and he also just has Ornithopters and Signal Pests that can often just attack even with a bridge in play. And then the combinations with Aether Grid allows him just to deal damage outside of combat with any creatures that are unable to attack otherwise. Kent Ketter's sideboard's a little bit less exciting. We'll probably see Worship come in here. You know, if he has any creatures, it's going to be difficult for Affinity to deal with Worship. And then the Disenchants will trade 1 for 1 against pretty much any card in Austin's deck.
All right, so those two will get ready for game number 2 here. Kent will be on the play again. Hopefully he can get something faster out of the gates. Meanwhile, we're going to tell you about the state championships that Star City Games has coming up later this year.
On April 23rd and 24th, don't miss the StarCityGames.com State and Provincial Championships. With Standard on Saturday and Modern on Sunday throughout the United States, Canada, and Puerto Rico, there are plenty of chances to become a champion. Every player that registers receives an exclusive art print, top 8 competitors receive an exclusive playmat and pin, and each champion receives a championship playmat, medal, and an invitation to any of the next 3 StarCityGames.com invitationals. Each event will also include an oversized token door prize customized with their location. Visit go.starcitygames.com/states to learn how to become a champion today.
Players checking over each other's sideboards as they shuffle up for game 2. During a finals, players can have access to the other person's deck list only between games. Once they present their deck to the other person, the judge will remove them.
I wonder if Kent has put together the Ensnaring Bridge Aether Grid sideboard plan. I'm sure that he's used to opponents having Ensnaring Bridge, not used to Affinity opponents having that component.
Well, I think it'll be interesting to see how Kent uses his Disenchants. So they're the kind of card that he'd always board in against Affinity just because removal is great. But when there's cards like Ensnaring Bridge in Holcomb's deck, I wonder whether or not Kent has to be more conservative about that effect.
Yeah, absolutely. He's going to want to. Usually Affinity, they have a lot of cards that matter, a lot of cards that don't. We won't see him tagging a Memnite with Disenchant, but sometimes a Cranial Plating is just going to force the issue. Minimally, he has to wait for something like that, but we might see him even play with his life total a little bit in the favor of just waiting to tag Ensnaring Bridge if he has a potentially lethal line that could succumb to that.
Yeah, for Kent, he had one thing about the Eldrazi deck. They really do pivot on some of those explosive openings. You'll see them mulligan frequently. Kent had to keep a speculative 6 when there's missing a piece. It didn't have the 2-mana land in it, and Kent never put anything together.
These are actually 2 decks in Modern that are known for mulliganing. The Eldrazi deck, known for mulliganing because it needs those lands and is generally pretty forgiving. Affinity, known for mulliganing because it needs those business spells, and oftentimes mulliganing with Affinity feels really terrible. Just because if you end up with 6 pieces of air, you're not going anywhere.
Yeah, well, Affinity does mulligan well, though, because there are still great draws that it can get on 6. Speaking of draws, one thing we have to note here, Austin Holcomb does have one of his Ensnaring Bridges in his opening hand. Now, because it costs 3 and he's on the draw, Kent, of course, can Thought Knot Seer that away fairly easily.
Right. It is interesting, though. We'll see how fast Austin comes out of the gates. If there's a lot of aggressive creatures in play, maybe the bridge isn't even going to be the best pick.
Now here's an interesting one. Kent has a copy of Stubborn Denial in his hand. And look at this, he's going to Stubborn Denial away the turn 1 Springleaf Drum.
Okay. Definitely was a high percentage that Austin had a creature there, but if he didn't, that Glimmer Void would be Stone Rained on top of that.
And a great draw from Kent. So he's going to play Eldrazi Mimic and Sky Spawner. He was worried about Ensnaring Bridge, but I believe his draw for this most recent turn was a copy of Thought Not Seer. So he'll get to nab that bridge before Austin can deploy it.
That is excellent. And that Stubborn Denial definitely stopped Austin from even having the ability to get too far ahead.
Ensnaring Bridge, Arcbound Ravager for Holcomb. We go back to Ketter. Land. We can go all up to 5. Does he want to smash Reality? Sacks a Scion and swings in. Now note he sacked a Scion so that he could leave his Hallowed Fountain up.
Right, representing something with blue or white mana. If you're Austin, you're wondering if it's a second Stubborn Denial, a Path to Exile.
Austin taking 12 damage. He's down to 8, but he has the bridge in hand. He's going to cast it. Ensnaring Bridge, 2 more cards in hand, so the Mimic can go across the bridge, but no one else right now.
Putting Ketter to the test. He says, is it the Stubborn Denial?
Or the Path to Exile.
I caught a glimpse of white cards in Ketter's hand, so it's going to hang around at least for now.
And that's going to be huge. So no attacks now due to Ensnaring Bridge. Kent will have to find one of his sideboarded disenchants. And with no way to find it, this is very bad for Ketter.
Just relying on the top of his deck for one of exactly 2 sideboard cards.
It looks like the 2 remaining cards in his hand are Eldrazi Displacer and Path to Exile. So actually I had no option at Thought Not Seer anyway. He was, once he cast that Stubborn Denial on turn 1, he was shields down to the Ensnaring Bridge.
I also believe that I spotted that Aether Grid in Austin's hand.
Mimic will block the Memnite. Creatures are going to trade away here. He still can swing in with Sky Spawner to put Holcomb down to 6. Right now, Holcomb can't empty his hand, but I believe it should be empty this next turn as Kent plays an Eldrazi Displacer. Ornithopter, Gear per Aether Grid.
Often Ornithopter is one of the worst top decks for Affinity, but it's actually just excellent off the top there.
Shoot Sky Spawner, pass the turn. Holcomb with 1 card in hand. Gut Shot, the draw for Kent Ketter.
That one's not going to do too much here.
He'll have to pass. He can leave up mana for the Eldrazi Displacer. But remember, Displacer cannot displace itself, and it's not going to stop Ketter from getting burned out by this Gear per Aether Grid. So just as we saw against Jacob Dyer at the end of round 2, Kent is being locked out by the Ensnaring Bridge Gear per Aether Grid. Here's Signal Pest. But at this point, they're all just artifacts. They're just increasing his clock with the Aether Grid.
Yep, Austin is up to 3 Aether Grid activations, and Kent is just praying like nothing else that Disenchant shows up on the top of his deck. It's that or bust.
Yeah, and Austin can shoot down the Eldrazi Displacer. It's going to take care of some outs. One thing, if it wasn't for the Aether Grid, Kent would actually have some ways to get under the Ensnaring Bridge. If he ever got Eldrazi Displacer plus Thought Not Seer going, he could possibly engineer some space where he starts making Austin have cards in his hand.
Right. But you also have to bank on them drawing a lot of lands, because a Thought Not Seer just takes a card.
Yeah, it's not great. Here's Reality Smasher from Kent. 3 more damage. Kent down to 13.
Pew, pew, pew.
Can Kent hit a Disenchant? He has to.
There's a half of a Aether Grid activation off of the top for Holcomb.
Yeah, Inkmoth Nexus into play. He'll pass. Go back to Ketter. Is it Disenchant? No, it's Flooded Strand. He'll pass. And at this point, you need the Disenchant to come just about next turn. You see, Holcomb's going to take a turn off from shooting Kent to take care of Eldrazi Displacer. What are your feelings on that one?
I'm not entirely certain why we're taking that line. I think I'm just going upstairs to Kent the entire time here. I want to close this game out as fast as possible because I sure look dead to these reality smashers if that bridge ever goes away.
Cranial plating onto Austin Holcomb. And cranial plating plus Ornithopter or Inkmoth Nexus is a huge deal here. He's going to activate Inkmoth. He does have double black mana to move the plating at instant speed. And he's going to swing Signal Pest and Inkmoth Nexus. I believe one card in Austin's hand.
I think he's actually activating that Inkmoth to tap it to activate Aether Grid.
Oh, okay. So he's not going to try to throw, because there is a possibility where he can swing with Signal Pest and then throw the cranial plating at instant speed onto Signal Pest after attacks have been made.
Arcbound Ravager also available to a similar end,
But
though they don't add up together.
Yeah, it looks like he's just going to Aether Grid Kent down instead.
So Kent would be at 8 if that Aether Grid didn't take care of the Displacer. I'm still not seeing a reason why that creature mattered in play.
I mean, at worst, it gives Kent an extra draw, but those don't mean too much right now. You see he'll play another Eldrazi Displacer. Maybe Austin will shoot it down and give him another turn.
And we'll find out if he cares about this one as well.
Well, Kent goes to 10. Maybe not. This Displacer in play for Kent does mean that Austin can't make that Signal Pest play next turn.
So between that ability to either use the Ravager or the cranial plating, tap the artifacts to Aether Grid first, Austin has the ability to kill Kent this turn if he's not afraid of any interaction.
Oh, well, Kent can displace the creature, right?
Oh, sure. That actually might be why he killed the first one in the first place.
And that's why he's going to kill the second one.
Right. Though ultimately now he has 6 points that he missed on Kent's face. So it's a line that would help him speed up his clock if it worked, but because it didn't work, it's actually slowing down his clock.
And now he's going to make the play. He's going to go for lethal. He activates Inkmoth Nexus, tries to throw the cranial plating at instant speed. Kent with the gut shot at the ready denies Austin the win this turn.
Ravager might have something to say about that.
Arcbound Ravager is going to eat some artifacts here and throw counters onto the Inkmoth instead. Now Kent will try for Path to Exile. That one's going to work. That one you can't Ravager through.
And now Kent has a lot more time to find that disenchant.
Well, maybe. He had to pay 2 for the gut shot.
True.
And there still are some number of artifacts in play for Austin. It's not out of the woods yet. Also because Austin can redo that play with Signal Pest next turn. Swinging Signal Pest and throwing cranial plating.
True.
So
there's a couple fewer artifacts now.
The promise of Kent draws Disenchant now on Ensnaring Bridge, is it actually enough? I guess it would win. No, it would win right now.
Right. These reality smashers they're extremely lethal.
Plays Eldrazi Mimic. That one's not lethal. Go back over to Holcomb.
So with the line of just shooting Kent, he's dead already. Austin would untap and do lethal damage on this turn.
Here's Arcbound Ravager. Here's Vault Scourge. He paid the black mana for it. 2, 4, 6 artifacts. Austin has Kent in 3 turns as it stands. He would give Kent 2 draws if he just uses the Aether Grid. So here's draw number 1 for Kent. Does he hit Disenchant? I don't think so.
Austin does also have Galvanic Blasts in his deck.
Kent is not the kind to slow roll here. He's the kind to fist pump and slam the Disenchant.
Yes, he would be windmill slamming that. Probably getting up from the table, doing a little jig.
Austin shoots him down to 5. Here's a Signal Pest. Is Austin going to try to win this turn? It looks like it. Here's Signal Pest. It attacks under the Ensnaring Bridge. Here's Cranial Plating thrown onto Signal Pest. And there's the concession. 2-0. Austin Holcomb with Affinity is your Louisville Open champion.
A little awkward management in terms of dealing with Eldrazi Displacers with the Aether Grip. Ended up not mattering. Kent was unable to find the Disenchant, which is the entire story of this post-sideboard game. Had access to both of his lock pieces, his combo, his Lantern Control, Transformational Sideboard, the Steering Bridge, and the Aether Grid in his opening hand. Was able to cast them. Kent never had a Thought-Knot Seer or a Disenchant to interact. And then the Steering Bridge just locked him out of the game.
So for Austin Holcomb, a big finish, defeating Eldrazi 3 consecutive rounds in the top 8, earns him the trophy. For Kent, Ketter, and Team Lotus, it is another great performance. Both Tenjum and Ketter into the top 8. Tenjum and both ending up losing at the hands of Holcomb.